working. I'm glad you're here. I want to speak from the heart and just talk about how harmful and how powerful our words can really be for ourselves and for other people. And as a church, that's an important thing to be thinking about, because we want it to be a safe place. We want it to be a place where people feel and know love. And if they feel harmed here, then they're not going to want to come, and other people aren't going to want to either. So why don't we move to our first passage in the book of James is where we're going to go today. Do we have a microphone or a megaphone that we're using today?
No, but you are megaphoned, so
okay.
Work.
Okay, good.
You mod, so you're louder. It's
okay. Awesome. Thanks, Alice. I think today I'm just going to read most of these, but if you want to come over here towards the slides. So James, maybe the brother of Jesus. There are a couple other James, so there's people that are going to say it's one person over another. I don't think it matters who really wrote the book of James, because we know the early church valued what he had to say. And he starts with, not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. And I think that's just a good kind of caution for everybody. It's not a caution, don't be a leader. It's when you do step up and you start, volunteering and helping and doing things, that there's a new standard for you to be a part of and to live into. And so, don't just rush in and say, I want to be up on stage. I want to do all these things. Because you need to have some training, some time spent in the community. That's where, VR MMO Church, it's being in the community for 3 months before you would volunteer and do things. So I hope some of you think about that. And there's also different levels of leadership that you can do. Not everyone is going to do all of the exact same things. This one is, I think, a really powerful passage here. We all stumble in many ways. I'm just going to stop there. Who here has stumbled? Just raise your hands. Who here has stumbled and you've done something, you've said something that you just like, oh, man, I shouldn't have said that. Or even not just thinking about speech. We're going to talk about speech, but like, oh, I forgot to do something that I know I should have done, and I just didn't do it the right way. How many of you have had that problem? Yeah, I'm just going to keep stopping today. Just kind of like, yeah, we're all guilty of doing things that maybe we didn't want to, or maybe we shouldn't have. So we all stumble in some way, but he's going to talk specifically about one way. So anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. So I don't know about you. I sometimes will give me a hard time, and we've got this running joke about, did you turn the filter off when you were thinking about that? And did you filter it before you decided to say that? And so she'll say, is your filter working today? Did you really mean to do that? And where I grew up, I don't know about where all of you are from. I know you're from all over the place. I'm in Michigan, and we use sarcasm a lot. Well, I moved to a place where they didn't understand sarcasm, and so I would use a tone of voice that, where I lived, made sense, and people understood it, that I'm frustrated, and I want you to know I'm frustrated. But when I would use that when I was living in Texas, she's like, you just sound mean. I know you're not mean, but they don't understand the way that you're saying things. You need to turn that filter on and think about how the people you're talking to are hearing it. So I'm not perfect in the way I talk. If you were perfect, the thing that James says is you could control your whole body. That's how powerful being able to control what we say is, that if we can control what we say, then we're going to be able to control everything else that we do, what we do with our hands, what we do with our feet, what we do with everything else. If we can figure out and learn to control what we say, it's the most important and powerful thing that we have. All right, so let's move to verse 3. And I love James giving us some examples here. When you put a bit in the mouth of a horse, you can make it obey us. We can turn the whole animal. Who here has ridden a horse before? Anybody ridden a horse? Okay, a few of you. Do you weigh more than the horse? Anybody here weigh more than a horse? I don't think so. Horses are big, powerful animals, and we put this little piece of metal in their mouth, and we have a couple of little ropes on it, and when we yank it, they turn their head and go wherever we want. It's so amazing that putting a bit in the mouth of the animal, we can control an animal and get the animal to do what we want. We can get it to stop. We can get it to turn. We can do all of these things. And we figured out how to be able to do that. So in the mouth is a lot of power, and we can use an animal's mouth to control it. All right. We'll move over. I think there's a whole bunch of images there of the mouth, and we've got an eye up there. That's pretty cool looking. But let's move on to the next verse. Thank you, Alice. So he's going to give us more examples. James wants to lay out that this isn't a one kind of thing. There's more. So take ships as an example. Although they are large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. I grew up around lakes, and my dad would have sailboats. He'd loan people money, and they couldn't pay him back, and they'd give him like a 12, 15-foot sailboat, and it'd have a mast on it with a sail that might be 12 or 15 feet high, but the rudder that controlled where it went was only a foot long, very tiny compared to the whole rest of it. But all you had to do was turn the rudder, and when you turn the rudder, all of a sudden the boat would go in the direction that you wanted it to go. So he's talking about how do we control things. So we can control animals with a very little thing. We can control a boat with a very little thing. Little things can control even bigger things. So likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, and it makes great boast. Considering what the great folks consider forest is set afire by a small spark. So I don't know if anyone has friends and family in California right now, but they know what it's like to have a whole forest set on fire and burning. And I've been praying for them, and I'm doing a fundraiser for a friend of mine who. Her family, her cousin, lost house, and so we might know those people who are being impacted right now. But it started with a little spark, and it is blazing, and people's lives are in danger right now. And it's a real danger to have fire running through a forest. And so when James says a little tiny thing can become something big, we don't have to imagine it. We can just watch the news and see that it's absolutely true. He says, the tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, the whole course of one's life, and it is itself set on fire by hell. So he now is telling us, he tells us all about how we can control things, and now he's saying our tongues are like fire. They cause forest fire kinds of damage when we use them. And so I want to kind of share a few examples of how that's happened in churches that I've worked with. Because it happens between friends. You've probably experienced somebody that said harsh and harmful things, and we already talked about, we all stumble, and we've said those things. But sometimes we don't think about that as a church, how we can harm and hurt other people with the words that we say. So a church that I was at, we had an organist. And so if you've not had an organ, it's like a piano, but it's got pipes that are going to make the sound through that. And he was a member of our church, and he volunteered to play the organ, but he worked for a different church that paid him a salary, and he was their full-time organist at the other church. The other church decided they were going to change what time worship was at. So he could no longer make it to the church that I was working at. And so we asked whether we should change service time so he could make it. He goes, no, I'm just going to go over there. I'm done volunteering here. You can just find some other people to volunteer. But that's not what people were hearing around town. They were hearing that I fired him because I didn't like him. And that's why he was no longer at church. But it wasn't it at all. He was working at the same time at another church when we were meeting for church. And he couldn't stop it. People just kept saying it because he kept not showing up on Sunday at our church. He kept showing up at the other church. So it must be true because he's over there and he's not coming back. And so that continues for a couple of years, and there's more things going on within the church. One of them was there were a group of people that were meeting after the service to talk about everything that went wrong. And they would meet at the restaurant, and they would talk about how many times I did something that they didn't like, or how many times the sound went out, or how many times they just talked about everything wrong that was going on. And one day, my daughter went to my wife, and she said, can I leave? Do I have to stay for the time of fellowship afterwards? We would usually have, cookies and a snack and some drinks. And she's like, can I go home? I'm tired of hearing everyone gossip about my dad. I don't want to stay at church. I want to go home. And it broke my heart. And I tried to address it, and there was nothing that I could do. And so I found a new church. It was more important to keep my relationship with my daughter and to not have her, hearing all of these things going on that we couldn't stop because they wouldn't stop. They just kept doing them. And so I went to a new church, and so that my daughter could find a place where people weren't after the service gossiping about everything that they didn't like, everything that was going on, and still talking about things that were 2 and 3 years ago, and they wouldn't let them go. So my daughter still struggles. She's not in a church. I don't think it's just that one occasion, but it's what happens at times. You get hurt in one church and by someone saying things, and you go to another church and you get hurt by someone saying or doing things at another church. And I'm just going to ask before I go on, how many of you, not talking of VRMMO church, okay, I'm not talking about here, how many of you have friends or family who have left a church they're at because they were hurt by that church? Just raise your hands. Yeah, it's not an unusual thing. And so to stop today and just talk about how do we do that? How do we have love and grace? And how do we listen to one another? How do we stop those fires when they're just a little spark before they become something really, really, really big and out of control? It's something we need to all learn how to do. So let's get back to James and see what else James has to say. Okay, so we're here at verse 7. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. James doesn't paint a really good picture there. I mean, we can tame animals. I mean, I don't have cats or dogs. I have lots of friends that do. I've had those before, but right now I've got a bunch of fish. Now they're not quite the same. I don't pet them, but I enjoy them and I like having them around, and they're easy to catch because they're in my tank and they're not going anywhere. They can't escape. And our pets are that way too. They're tame. They're going to come to us when we call. They're going to want to come, but our tongues, no matter how old we get, we can still let our tongues get full. And sometimes we even let our tongues get out of control more with the people that we love a lot, because we can't say it to other people. We know it will hurt them. And sometimes we say it to the people we really love, not meaning it as much, but saying it there because we feel safe enough to say everything we're feeling. And then we realize later that it wasn't received the way we thought, or hurt someone with what we said. And so those things happen to all of us. All right, so moving on to verse 9. This one is really, I love this part. With the tongue we praise our Lord and our Father, and with it we curse human beings who are made in the likeness of God. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives? Are grapevines bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. So he's now given a couple more examples about two things coming out of the same thing. I know he uses figs and grapes, and you might not eat figs and grapes, so I'll just use apples and oranges. You go to an apple tree, and there's lots of apple trees by me. I'm never going to find an orange on an apple tree. It's just not going to be there. They don't grow on apple trees. Oranges grow on orange trees, and apples grow on apple trees. They don't mix. You can't mix them up at all. So we know how plants work. And he also talks about salt water and fresh water. They don't mix together. You can't go to a fresh water source and get salt water, or go to the ocean and pull out a cup of fresh water. You can't do that. And he says, then why is it that we praise God with our mouths? We talk about God and who he is and praise him, and then we look at a person like all of you who are created in the image of God, and we say bad things about them. We curse them. We wish bad things. We talk about them. We do all of those things. He's like, this shouldn't be the same way. You shouldn't find oranges on an apple tree, and you can't get fresh water out of the ocean. It shouldn't be that what comes out of our mouth hurts people, and it's the same mouth that we praise God with. I'm just looking at the artwork here with I don't know if there's a well there with the hearts. That's really cool with the water there. Yeah, it's just a great image of love, and we want it to be a source that people could go to when they need fresh water, not to be something that's bitter and salty and is harmful. We want it to be definitely a blessing to them. Okay, so verse 13. Whoever is wise and understanding among you, let him show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom. So the way that we are to act is out of good deeds done in humility. So remember, he started by saying not many should want to be teachers because it's hard. You're up front all the time. People are watching everything you do. People will talk about everything you do. But you also are the example. And here's where he's saying, when you are the example, you do it humbly. You don't go around bragging like, I didn't come in here saying, I know all of you have made mistakes and I've never made one of them ever. Because I make a lot of mistakes. I wish that I had never, ever, when my kids were growing up, said anything harsh or mean when I was angry. I know I did. And I try to apologize for that when I know I've said something that's hurtful to them. I'm going to tell you another church hurt that I've experienced, and so if I'm gonna get potentially emotional about this, and I don't want to be triggering to anybody, so I just want to give you a warning. I'm going to share something really, really personal. I don't like to talk about this because it's really harmful to my family. So when COVID was happening, where we were at, we were shut down. You couldn't meet in person at all. Restaurants were closed down. You could only do takeout. You couldn't go anywhere. And my son, his wedding was going to happen, and his husband, who he was getting married to, they had a ceremony at the beach. We were allowed to have an outdoor a wedding, and then we had a reception for less than 30 people. We could do that, so we did that in my backyard. The church knew about it. I didn't do the wedding. I just was dad. I just was there because I love my son. And people started saying that the wedding happened at the church, which my denomination does not allow me to do same-sex weddings, and I didn't do that. And people started saying, well, it would happen at the church, and the pastor did it, and he's the one doing this. And then people were telling me, middle of a pandemic, my kids who came home from school, who were in college, and now they're unemployed, just graduated, no job, living in my basement, I should kick them out of the house. This is like, I don't understand how Jesus would do that. I don't understand how he wouldn't love his own family. And so we sent a letter to everybody explaining what really happened. And I'm not going to go through all of the pain of everything that happened, but 6 months later, people were still getting phone calls saying that this had happened, that I had done this, and all of these things. And people were still asking me when I was going to quit. Are you going to quit? When are you going to leave? You're the problem. You need to leave. You need to get out of here. And not everyone at the church knows this, but I didn't find out till after I resigned. There were death threats made to my son and his husband. And I don't know they would have carried them out. My son didn't think they were real, but they said if you ever get caught alone at church, it'll be the last time. It'll be the last time that you're going to be there. Now, this is 4 years ago. I still don't know who I can talk to at the church, who's left the church, who's still talking about me, who's saying things, and none of my kids are going to a church. My wife struggles. She's not in VR. I would have invited her. We only have one headset. I would have invited her to come and be here, but she struggles to go to a church. I struggled for quite some time before I was able to start going back and being around people because I don't know if I'm safe. What if people start talking about me again? What if people start saying things about me? What if they find out about my son and now they're going to attack me and tell me how I'm wrong for loving my son? So I'm just trying to put my words together here. So a good thing happened this week. A good thing happened this week. My friend, who he left his church about 4 years ago, and I helped him through a hard time when he left his church. He's now an English teacher. He is working at that church now, helping them find a new pastor. And he helped a conversation happen where they asked about, is there something that we can do to help bring healing to the situation that happened? And so yesterday, my wife and I and he and 2 elders from the church, we got together for lunch and we had a conversation. It didn't fix the situation, but we all got to tell, what did we experience? How did I contribute to the problem? What would I have done? What could I have done differently? And we talked about, okay, what are our hopes? Can we? I would love to, go around town and not have to go, well, I see there's someone from the church over there. Should I say hi to them, or are they upset at me? Or if I wave and say hi, are they going to go talk about, well, guess who I ran into at the grocery store today? You'll never believe it. And he just acted like nothing was wrong. I don't even know when I run into someone what they're going to say and what they're going to think. So I'm really hopeful, but I can't go ask for it. I needed my friend to come in and help the church come to me and help to heal that situation. So I don't know if any of you have had anything that serious happen. That's why I don't talk about it that often. It's really painful. It's really painful for my family. But what I do want to say is it's not Jesus that did it to me. It's not God that did it to me. It was people that just treated me bad. They were, like James said, they were coming from out of their mouth saying things and doing things, and there's a fire, and there's still all the scorched earth that my family is still living with. We haven't been able to rebuild yet. We haven't been able to find a church home yet. We're still injured from all that fire, all that damage that just raged throughout that time 4 years ago. Okay, James has a few more things. And I know sometimes we would stop here, but I love that doing a whole chapter at once. I really, really do. Is this, let's see, what verse did I leave off? Okay, over here, 14. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you have disorder and every evil practice. And then I think this is the end over here. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap of righteousness. So as James is finishing up of talking about it, he gives us the two things that we can have. We can have all these things we're harboring in our heart. Like right now, I could harbor a whole bunch of pain and suffering and resentment from what happened. And I could be bitter. And when the church and my friend said, hey, can we get together and try to solve this? I could say, no, I don't ever want to talk to you ever again because of all that you did to me. And I could just keep that all inside, and it would hurt me just as much as I would be hurting them. But on the other side, my friend is sowing seeds of peace there. And I'm hoping that it will grow and that we'll have a harvest in that, the peacemakers sowing peace and reaping a harvest, and all of those things of having pure motives, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy. One of the things I don't think I do a good job of always is showing mercy to everyone. I'll talk about something that maybe is not so serious for a minute. When I see someone, and I'm driving in snow right now, we got snow all over the place. When I see someone driving in the snow that passes me and they're going too fast and they end up in the ditch, I kind of snicker and laugh a little bit because they had it coming. And I'm not that I'm not going to stop and help, but I still might have that kind of thought under my breath and snicker and laugh at that. And sometimes we treat people that way when we say things like, oh, they deserve to hear this. They're that kind of person. And one other part that's really, really hard when you start to have division in churches is people take sides. People start taking sides. You start recruiting all of my friends to come and support me, and they're going to know the real truth about it. And then the other person does the same thing. They tell their friends to rally support for them. I sometimes find myself stuck in the middle of that, of both sides are telling me a different story. They both want me to be on their side, and I want to be on both of their sides. I don't want to choose sides. I want to love both of them and be part of that. I did get to have a good experience with a church where they had that division going on before I got there. The pastor would have a board meeting, and afterwards one group of people was saying one thing, and the pastor was going around rallying troops on the other side, and the church was divided. And I got to come into that church who had just a couple of kids in elementary school and just a couple of kids in the high school, and people who had gone other places to 6 years afterwards. When I left, we had 30 kids in elementary school come into the church. So healing can happen when we get people together and we talk about how painful it was. We talk about what we did and how we hurt, and we don't hold on to the bitterness. I'm not saying we don't feel the pain. I've got scars, physical scars, and scars show us and remind us that something tragic happened in our life. And we get spiritual scars, we get emotional scars, we get physical, we get all of those same things as well when we go through something. And so the healing can happen, and sometimes it's slow, but sometimes it takes time before you can work through something. And so I've had these 4 years to work on stuff, and now I hope that some people in the church will be ready to work on healing with me. Some might not be, and it might be 2, 3, 4 years to get to that point. I don't know how that's going to all work, but if we have the ability to stop sooner and just consider, am I adding to the fuel, to the fire? Am I helping to spark this wildfire out of control to make it worse? Or are there things I can do to put an end to it? So that's kind of where I am. I hope that you know how serious our words are, and just how much we should take care with what we say. I had one other thing I was looking up. It's when you hear a negative thing, and this is just our words and power of our words altogether. It takes between 3 to 5 positive words just to get back to even, to neutral. So we need to hear 5. Like if someone tells you that what you just created is awful and ugly, you're going to have to hear 5 times of, man, that was awesome. That's amazing. I love what you did, to just feel like, meh, I'm okay. So we have that power. I keep trying to all the time I do this. When I go to restaurants and I'm going to give a rating for them, I only give 5 stars. Because I figure there's enough people out there giving a 1 star that I don't need to add to that. So if the waitress had a bad day, I'm going to say, I'm praying for you, and I'm going to leave a big tip so that I can make a difference in your day. When the food wasn't cooked right, I'm just going to say it was a bad day. But if it was amazing, I'm going to let everybody know. So if I leave a review, it's 5 stars. If it's not 5 stars, I don't tell you it's 5 stars and lie. I just don't leave a review to add to anyone else. So I hope those are some helpful things to think about, to just help us in every place of life, and to also help us within churches to know that we all are sinful in some way. We all stumble, and to have mercy and grace for one another. I think I'm going to just close in prayer, unless there's anything else, Alina, that we need to do.
No, just close in prayer, and then this little fountain here, we're going to keep it in this space. Like all the other little decorations, we're going to restore back to the regular room, but the fountain we are keeping. Maybe we'll move it over somewhere in the corner, because we call it the fountain of forgiveness. So if you are ever having a challenging conversation with someone here, and it's taking place here in RecRoom, right? We ideally would stop that difficult conversation and run over here to the clubhouse and talk about it right here, where this is visual reminder as you have that conversation. Like, okay, oh, that's kind of to help us with
Yeah,
the reminder of our words.
that's fantastic. I love it. It's really creative. I like it. All right, then let's just pray, everybody. God, I thank you that of all things that you did, you showed us what forgiveness is, how to bring forgiveness to others, how to forgive, and you sent your own son Jesus to show us that and to live that out. When they were beating him and mocking him, he didn't retaliate. In fact, when he was on the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I'm not always like that, but I want to be like that. I want to be like Jesus. I want to be able to forgive no matter what people do. I want to be able to forgive in the middle of knowing that they don't know what they're doing and they don't understand. And I want to have that kind of grace and mercy to be able to show the scars like he does with his hands and his side, and he goes to the disciples and he shows them and he says, "See here." And he welcomes them in and he loves them. Even though they abandoned him, they ran away, or they denied him, he still loved them. God, help us to have the same kind of love Jesus does for everyone. Pray this all and ask your blessing on everyone here, on all who will be watching later on, anybody that it's shared with. They may find peace with you. Just pray this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.